do y'all have a person of interest? Y'all may not have a suspect, but is there a person of interest in this case right now?
So again, we want to provide as much information as possible, and I think we've been very consistent, and we have said that we do not have a suspect and we do not have a person of interest at this time. We are building, again, as you mentioned before, building a profile, we're building a picture, we're trying to put all the pieces together, and when the time comes, we will most definitely put that information out.
Investigators remain tight-lipped as they're still on the hunt for a suspect. Today marks 2 weeks since 4 University of Idaho students were brutally stabbed to death inside their home. Former FBI investigator Bill Daly joins us now. Good morning, Bill. First off the top here, there's been a lot of pressure put on this idea of targeted, what that means and how they might know it. Why do you think it is that they believe someone was targeted and why they're not telling us how they know that?
Well, first of all, you have to realize there is the killer loose out there. Yeah. So the more information they provide, which by the way, I think they've handled it very well to this point, is that when they need the public's help, they'll reach out. But in the meantime, don't need to either get people's concerns further out there in the community or signal something to a killer. But I think, some of the things surrounding, this horrendous incident, the fact that there were 2 people who were sleeping downstairs who were unharmed. And it does seem to be something that someone would have either had to know the inside of the home, know their routine. There are some things around this that don't ring true, at least in my mind, as to be some kind of random kind of break-in the middle of the night and just happened upon these individuals. If it was someone on a rampage who was a mass murder rampage, you would have thought they would have also gone downstairs and harmed the other people. So there are a couple of things that start to suggest that there was something in these people's orbit, where one of the victims' orbit, that caused this incident to come about by this murderer.
I think a lot of us sit here and it feels like we're looking at this going, man, they don't have much here. They're not naming a suspect. They're not sending us in a direction of having faith in this getting solved soon. One thing I want to point out is they did come out and say, listen, these murders that happened in other states, one of them specifically in Oregon that was a stabbing, we don't believe there's a connection there. Is the simple fact that they can rule that out, is that evidence that maybe they do have more than what we know?
Well, I think it's perhaps comforting, to know that they've ruled it out, that there isn't someone kind of loose in the Northwest area who's committing these crimes. And I do think that there's some things here that by not hearing certain things from the police, I think they have a lot more than we were aware of. We know that they've actually had literally hundreds of interviews conducted and simply hundreds of pieces of forensic evidence collected. It is, Joey, kind of like an onion here. They're kind of peeling it back. It's not one of these crimes that initially kind of reveals itself. In many cases, within a few days, you find out it was someone closely associated with the victims who may be responsible, a family member or something else. In this case, it's kind of looking further out. And as I say, talk about those orbits, it's someone further out perhaps in their orbit who might be responsible for this. And also, we talk about forensic evidence, and a lot of people have asked, well, by this point, wouldn't they have back fingerprints? They would have back DNA. My point is that, fingerprints or DNA are only good as something you have to compare it to. So, for instance, you, Joey, and myself, our fingerprints are our file. If we commit something, they'll know who we are. But if you've never been fingerprinted or you don't have your DNA in a database, it's great after the fact when you find a suspect to perhaps put the suspect at the scene, but not necessarily something that is an aha moment.
Well, thank you so much for your expertise. There are so many more questions than answered. I appreciate the fact that you poised the idea maybe the fact we don't have those answers doesn't mean the police doesn't have those answers. Hopefully, we pray that the family gets resolution, justice, and they find this killer soon. Thank you so much for joining us.
We do, Joey. You're welcome.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.